a Google discussion group. And soon it became apparent that there was enough people with interest in the idea of applying agile ideas to infrastructure to actually get together and start talking about something. So there was an amazing presentation at Velocity, and Velocity comes up in the second thread. Velocity is the big web operations conference that was started 5 or so years ago now. But John Allspore, who is widely recognized as a leading thinker in this part of the world, at Velocity gave a talk about, at the time I think he was probably at Yahoo, doing lots and lots of deploys, and how you could deploy software very rapidly by getting developers and operations people to focus together. And this kind of really sparked discussion, because back in 2009, Velocity was only West Coast. There was no Velocity equivalent in Europe. And Patrick felt, we really need to get together in Europe and start discussing some of these ideas, particularly around agile infrastructure. And so that's how DevOps Days in October of 2009 in Ghent was founded. And Patrick really just hit up a bunch of people that he knew through interest in this area, and kind of got them together to say, let's talk about and share ideas about this. And it was absolutely brilliant. There were about 50 of us together. There was, I think there was one, possibly two people from the States, certainly John Willis. There was one person from Australia, Lindsay Homewood. There were 3 or 4 of us, maybe even 5 or 6 from London. So Julian Simpson, REP&R, Chris Reed, myself, and we got together and had a fantastic time. And from there, ideas disseminated. I wrote a blog post called "What is this DevOps thing anyway?" which kind of summarized at that time what DevOps meant, and that went viral, and people got very excited about it. So that's kind of the first thread. But alongside of this, this velocity thread is very, very important. The idea that in order to function at scale, we need to be agile is well known, but being agile in our infrastructure is a different kind of approach, and so that's kind of an important observation. And I think the person who was most responsible, I think, for sparking this is Jesse Robbins. Jesse Robbins is a co-founder of OpsCode, a former Amazon person. And he did some talking and some writing about how lean and quick operations is a competitive advantage if you want to be effective in your startups. So that's kind of the second thread. And then the final thread, and this is something which really struck home for me at the second DevOps Days in Hamburg, was the lean startup thread. So, Eric Ries is a very interesting fellow, and Eric Ries has a blog called Lessons Learned, which eventually turned into a book called The Lean Startup. And what Eric did was he took some of the ideas from lean manufacturing, so particularly Japanese-based and also North American concepts of how we can reduce waste and how we can take these approaches and apply them to a startup. And he started writing about this, and the Lean Startup is the seminal book to read if you want to know more about it. But the interesting thing about this was that Jez Humble, who was and still is a senior consultant for ThoughtWorks, Jez Humble kind of got involved with this and started thinking about how we could apply lean startup ideas to the development world. And so he wrote an amazing book called Continuous Delivery, and I recommend that you go and read that book. It's very readable and very interesting. And he talks about reducing waste and getting towards a state of continuous flow in the delivery of software. And Jez gave an excellent presentation at DevOps Days in Hamburg, in which he put forward the idea that in order to gain traction in larger businesses, what you need to do is effectively sponsor a small startup in your own business, and that startup should have the ideas of iterating quickly and coming up with the smallest viable features, and should be obviously cutting whatever waste is possible. And an obvious waste to cut is having any kind of silos between an operations team and a development team, because if you look at where this kind of comes from, if you look in startup land, why would you ever separate development and operations? Okay, maybe from a perspective they might have slightly different goals, features versus stability, but in a startup you can't afford to do that. You just need to get people together to share those goals, and so that's the kind of the lean startup thread. So I've rambled for a very long time because it's a fascinating and exciting subject. I will pause for a bit and say, any questions about that? Any ways that you would like to direct the conversation at this point? Oh, I see that someone's saying there's a question, but Alex, perhaps you can help me. I'm not very good at driving this interface. Alex.
Yeah, sorry. I think, yeah, that was actually, that was Henrik, I think, just saying hello to you in the question panel. So if anybody wants to pose a question, they can either type it in the question panel or raise a hand and we'll pass you on.
Okay, so no questions yet.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, I'll put Liam on.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Liam. Hello, Liam.
Yes.
Liam, you had a question or a way you wanted to direct the conversation?
Liam, would you rather type the question in?
Yes. Can you see it? Can you see the question?
Yeah, we can see the question now. It's
okay. Sorry.
Ah, I see.
Or if you can hear me, I can explain better than I can type.
Yeah, I mean, you can pose the question over the microphone if you'd rather.
Okay. I come from an operations perspective for a long period of time, and I really want to reduce the hurdles for my developers and my team to be successful. What I have had to deal with over a long period of time is developers who will throw out code or who will make very bad choices or very insecure choices and then go to management because their code is not being deployed. And unfortunately, as an operations support staff, developers seem to have much higher visibility than the operations team. So even though we're all on the same team, we throw in bad code because the developers cry about it and nobody listens.
Okay, that's a good question. So I'm not going to, well, I am going to, but then I'm going to caveat around that. The flip response is that one of the key ideas of DevOps is the idea of shared responsibility. And you can't have shared responsibility without having some way of measuring that and without having some way of impacting people's behavior. And a very typical way of impacting people's behavior is to involve the developers in the fault resolution process. And there are several very good reasons for doing this. Firstly, they wrote the code. They understand the infrastructure. They understand the architecture above the operating system. But secondly, if you include developers in an on-call rota or in an escalation function for on-call engineers, then suddenly they've got skin in the game, and it's very important that they keep an eye on the quality of the code that they're pushing into production. And this comes from what it is that you reward. And this is why I was then going to say about how we measure this. Because fundamentally, from my perspective, DevOps is about understanding that developers and operations people are in the business together with one specific goal. And that specific goal is to deliver value to the business. And that means that both developers and operations people need to be measured on that. Now, historically, developers might be measured on how much code they produce, or how quickly they produce features, or whether they deliver according to a certain timeline, without in any way measuring whether or not that software fulfilled its function or was reliable. And similarly, operations people are frequently measured on slightly arbitrary things, like not even uptime, but like how many tickets were resolved, or things like that. These are things which are not necessarily directly related to the business. Now, this is obviously much easier in a smaller business, but I would argue that what you're actually describing here is an organizational and a cultural problem. And this is where DevOps is really key, because DevOps highlights that the problems that most of us face on a day-to-day basis are not actually technical, but they're actually cultural. And so my answer to, from an operations perspective, how do you prevent lousy developers from shipping bad code, is to give the lousy developers some responsibility for the code that they ship.
So the part of the DevOps growth depends on the senior management embracing the concepts.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. So I mean, I think, especially in a large company, and this is one of the things I'll touch on next week when I talk about challenges for DevOps. So the message has gone out, right? Everybody's heard of DevOps. Everybody's talking about DevOps. Unfortunately, not everybody gets it, because right now everybody thinks, or most people think, DevOps is just throw in some configuration management and some fancy dashboards for monitoring. Now we're doing DevOps. DevOps is fundamentally about culture. Now, I mentioned John Willis earlier, a good friend of mine, and we were talking on the phone a couple of days ago, and when he used to work for DTO Solutions, he used to do some DevOps workshops. He'd come in for a couple of days, and he'd do some DevOps workshops to take people through what it would mean to start to embrace DevOps in their business. And he would spend the first day, or even more than a day, covering the cultural importance of DevOps. And every single time people say, yeah, okay, John, I get the culture, move to the tools, man. Come on, can we just get to the tools? Can we talk about Chef? Can we talk about Puppet? Can we talk about cool monitoring stuff? Missing the point, okay? DevOps is a cultural thing. And I think the reason for this is that the best operations people are the operations people who understand the value of getting features out of the door quickly and do everything they can to help. And the best developers are the ones who build features that you can operate and which are maintainable in production and are open to suggestions on how to do that. And those are cultural things. Those are soft skills things. And at a higher level than that, in order to start to make these inroads in an established company, you need a sponsor. We're seeing this increasingly. Starting to understand that is necessary, and you know, this is hard because a lot of entrenched ideas, and for good reason. So it's difficult.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Not at all. Does anybody else have a question or want to direct the conversation? questions. Okay. Well, I will continue a little bit then. I'm gonna go down a line of saying, so what can we do to start to implement DevOps in our organizations? Because that's a kind of an interesting challenge. So I think I'd start by saying that that in order to understand how to implement DevOps, we need a relatively clear way of measuring or way of defining what that looks like. And I think that one of the best and most practical descriptions of that came from Damien from DTA Solutions, and Damien talked about CAMS, which stands for culture, automation, measurement, and sharing. So we already talked about culture, and the thing about culture is that making DevOps work in your organization is about people and process, and it's about influence and incentivizing, and this is a soft science. Okay, now one of the things that I frequently say when I consult with people, and it's almost to the stage that I would call it Nelson Smith's first rule, is don't try to solve a people problem with technology. Okay, so the very first thing we need to do as a part of introducing DevOps into our organizations is to think about culture, and culture simply means getting people together. One of the simplest things you can do if you're a manager and you're trying to make this happen is get developers and operations people together. Take them out for beer, take them out for pizza. You can also do things like co-locating with people, mixing people up, making developers and operations people sit in the same part of the office, same part of the building. Getting developer people and operations people to collaborate on each other's stand-ups. This is all kind of simple introduction of cultural stuff. So the second thing is automation, and automation is absolutely key. And the technical people will say, aha, hurrah, automation, we're talking about tests now. Actually, not so much, because automation is actually a fundamental attitude and a design decision. So it's not just, oh yeah, we can write some scripts. We actually need to start thinking from top to bottom about where we can automate. And that's because automation needs to go through the full stack. So if you think about the life cycle of an application, from the time it's being developed to the time that it's being maintained right the way through until sundown for that particular application, there's a lot of places where automation can take place. So we need to think about how we can automate the build process, how we can automate deployment, how we can automate testing, how we can automate the release process, how we can automate provisioning of systems, how we can automate the ongoing management of the infrastructure, how we can automate looking after the data and backups. And the way that we go about this will depend on the kind of industry that we're in. Now, I actually represent OpsCode in Europe. So Atlanta Systems is OpsCode's primary professional services partner in Europe. And so I would obviously say to you that one of the very best ways that you could automate your systems would be to start framing your infrastructure as code. And there are three leading ways that you could go about doing that. One is CF Engine, another is Puppet, and another is Chef. I've got a significant experience with using Puppet and significant experience with using Chef, very little experience with using CF Engine, but all three of these are excellent tools that you could use to start implementing automation in your systems. So then the third thing, the M in CAMS, is measurement. Now, here again, we need to think about what measurement means and why we're measuring it. So for me, if you are going to make dev and ops collaborate together, they need to be looking at the same information. And the classic way that I would describe this is by saying, if you have a monitoring system in your infrastructure, or if you have a big monitor or a projector on the wall which has got some red and green things that people look at to say how healthy is the system. What is that actually measuring? And my experience is that frequently what this is measuring is not the performance of the business, but some arbitrary metric like the load on a particular server. Now, these things are useful to measure for correlation and for fault diagnosis, but really what we need to be measuring is the stuff that matters to the business, and that measurement needs to take place right the way at the bottom of the infrastructure and right the way through. And here we have a perfect opportunity for collaboration, because frequently what you need to do to measure the stuff that really matters to the business is you need to write some fairly involved tests. You might need to do things which log onto your machine, insert something into a database, measure the time it took to do that, check that the thing did check that the entry was correct. You might want to look at the way that customers are navigating around a website. You could do that with some JavaScript hotspot technology. There are various ways you can do this, but there's a lot of metrics out there, and the metrics which actually matter are the ones that the business owners care about, and those need to be graphed, and those need to be alerted on, and those need to be on every system engineer's dashboard and every developer's dashboard, visible together for everybody. And that kind of measurement is what allows people and process and technology to all merge together and be effective. So then the final thing of the CAMS approach is S. S is for sharing. So sharing is about feedback. It's about being public. It's about being open. It's about not being afraid. So a great way that you could do this is you could share ideas on a public wiki. When there's a failure, you should be very public about the failure that you had and what the sources were, and you should get developers and operations people together to go through a post-mortem about how the problem arose. But you should do that in a way which says failure is not a bad thing. Failure is only a bad thing if no lesson was learned from it. I frequently say to people at Atalanta Systems, it's okay to make mistakes. It's not okay to make the same mistake twice. But sharing is very, very important. And sharing of problems and sharing of mistakes is fine. Now, the more we share our ideas, the more we share our successes, the more we share our failures, the greater the size of the community of people who are getting involved in DevOps will become. And this leads to an influx of new ideas. It leads to the encouraging of learning. And you're seeing DevOps Days events springing up all over the place. There was one in Austin a few months ago. There's one in Mountain View in a week and a bit's time. There's one in Rome in October. And a common thread that we're having in these events is that we want to hear people's stories. We want to hear people say, this is what I did. This is what went well. This is what didn't go so well. And DevOps as a movement is about making that kind of a stuff happen. So I think another thing that is important to understand is how a manager can get involved. I've done interim management and sat in on teams to help them bring about DevOps improvements. And I think that if you have a manager, or if you are a manager and you are interested in making DevOps adoption happen, then you need to take responsibility for cultivating cooperation between developers and operations. And this means that you need to be brave in squashing bad communications habits. So a classic case within the system administration world is the BOFH, the bastard operator from hell. It's absolutely not okay to have an attitude which says, I am root and I say no, or I will make your life hard unless you do this thing for me, or actually I'm just angry because I've been sitting in a data center for the last 15 years and I haven't seen the sun. I mean, that's just not okay. And as a manager, we need to actually take responsibility for making these things change. And sometimes that means shaking things up a little bit, and sometimes that means having some difficult conversations. Another bad communication habit that you need to squash, and I already touched on this a little bit, is the idea of blame. So when we have post-launch discussions, post-migration discussions, retrospectives, it's very important that this is done in a safe environment. And again, John Allspore has got some great stuff about blameless retrospectives and blameless investigations of things which have gone right and things which have gone wrong. Another thing which is very important is to observe the way people speak and observe the language that they use. And as a manager, if you circulate around and sit with people, go out for lunch with people, and you can tell where the DevOps adoption is happening when developers and sysadmins start to use things like we, and oh, I asked somebody and we looked at this together. And when people are unhappy, you can sense whether or not they're feeling there's a tension on account of old silos or whether it's on account of a recognition that there are hard problems to solve. And I think for senior people, and by senior I mean beyond management level, if there's a person on this call who's thinking, I would like to see this happen in my organization, but I'm not going to get involved with hands-on management, that's something I don't do anymore, but this is something I want to do, then I think what you need to do is you need to look out for a person who might be a good spark, who might be a good person who can take on the mantle of introducing DevOps in a team. And I would say that you can spot those people very easily, because those are the kind of people that people like. Those are the kind of people that are considered to be approachable. Those are the kind of people who don't get in heated arguments. Those are the people who are full of good ideas and not afraid of putting them forward. And those are the kind of people who make it their business to get stuff done. And if you can see a person in your organization who's likable and approachable and full of good ideas and is focused on getting stuff done, that could be a good candidate person for bringing on and mentoring towards a DevOps capability. I will pause again because we're coming close to running out of time. Are there any further questions, observations, or directions that we'd like to take the conversation?
Again, if you want to pose a question, either raise a hand and I'll unmute you so you can talk to Stephen directly, or you can type the question in the questions pane.
All right. Okay. Well, then I will conclude a little bit by saying what some of the challenges are for DevOps going forward as I perceive them at the moment. And I think that there are a number of challenges, but some of them are in recognition of the fact that DevOps as a movement has grown really very rapidly. And there's now a large community of people who are excited about DevOps, and also a large number of people talking about it. And so I think one of the most important things that DevOps as a community needs to watch out for is to take care of that community, to not be arrogant, to not feel that we know everything, to not be prescriptive and start to write down rules for the way that the community behaves, but to be open to changes, because this is a very young community, and this is a very new set of ideas to introduce, especially in the enterprise. So, and therein we have another important challenge to consider. There was an article a couple of years ago which talked about, has Agile crossed the chasm? has Agile gone from the place where the early adopters, the visionaries and the technical enthusiasts are involved? Have we made the leap to the mainstream market where the pragmatists and the conservatives and the skeptics are involved? Now, I think probably the answer to that within the world of Agile development is yes, but it's taken 10, 12, 15 years to get there. DevOps has a similar growth curve, and there's clear interest in the enterprise. And to put this in perspective, I'm on the organizing committee for the various DevOps Days events. For DevOps Days in Austin, about which we made very little noise, and very little publicity, very little marketing, within a few days we had $25,000 worth of sponsorship from big companies. For DevOps Days in Mountain View, coming up in a few weeks' time, we have had big companies with big responsibilities to shareholders or to venture capital firms knocking the door down to give money for sponsorship. And this shows that smart people in marketing positions are identifying that this is a really important and critical thing. And what we need to do as a community is to demonstrate and prove that DevOps is not just a fad. There have been many movements in the history of IT which have looked like they're going to revolutionize enterprise IT, and very few, if any of them, have. Now, I'm not going to suggest that DevOps is about changing the whole world and revolutionizing enterprise IT, but one of the important things that strikes me is that beyond the fundamental, is there a question? Beyond the fundamental, okay, I'll just finish this point and then I'll read some questions. It has scrolled off my screen. Beyond the fundamental point that DevOps is about helping businesses to succeed, I also believe that there is an ethical and a humanitarian angle to DevOps, and that is that for people who work in this industry, for people who are developers or for people who are system administrators, DevOps is an injection of fun. DevOps is an injection of good values and sustainability. And DevOps is an injection of making those people feel that they're actually contributing towards the growth of the company. And I think that's very, very valuable and very exciting. And the large percentage of people who work in this industry work in the enterprise. And so a measure of whether DevOps has succeeded is whether or not those people working in the enterprise are starting to find their jobs more fun, starting to feel that they're more involved and directly involved in the success of the company, and starting to feel that they are very excited to be in this industry. So, Marissa asks, is such a person to mentor the organization's sole job is to do this? So let me see if I can understand that question. I was talking about finding a person who was approachable and has good ideas and gets stuff done. And I was thinking that that could be a kind of person who would be good to move in the direction of introducing DevOps capabilities within an organization. And I used the word that person might need to be mentored. And if there's going to be mentoring, that needs to be by somebody who's got some idea of what they're doing. And my suggestion there would be either that that person, the senior manager, might get alongside this person and have regular conversations about how this is going. That person might want to sponsor that individual to get some agile coaching brought in or some DevOps coaching brought into the organization, but that person should be the go-to person to make this happen. Marissa, does that answer your question? Which department will this person be in? DevOps. Well, I don't think DevOps is a department. I think this is a very important thing. DevOps is a cultural movement. Okay? DevOps is an approach of doing things. DevOps isn't a job title. DevOps isn't a business. DevOps isn't an organization. DevOps is an approach to doing things. And I think the way that you measure this is by saying, are we getting people who are historically from completely different parts of the business together, working together to make things happen. And you can do that by building a new team, or by building, by introducing people into an old team. But I wouldn't call this a new department. Henk asks, any advice for a traditional IT veteran who's done some DevOps kind of stuff in the past? So I think as a person who's been in IT for a jolly long time and seen a lot of stuff, what you should do, Henk, is make sure that you are drinking from the fountain. Make sure that you're getting with people. Make sure that you are engaged on mailing lists or IRC or phone calls. Get together with people because you've got heaps and heaps and heaps of experience, which is of great benefit, especially for new people who've been doing this for only a few years. And this is one of the exciting things about DevOps, is that it's actually bringing new blood into the industry. And as that new blood comes into the industry, there is the risk that, that there will be a certain cavalier attitude which says, this is all about automation, I can do that, yeah, but forgetting about the backups. Or this is all about writing cool applications in Ruby, but not actually understanding that these applications need to be secure. And as a veteran in IT, you know all about that. You've already done some DevOps stuff, and you could be an excellent mentor for a junior DevOps person, but you need also to make sure that you are drinking from the fountain and bringing in a fresh stream of new ideas by going to events, going to meetups, and hanging out on conversations like this.
I think Liam has another question. So I think Liam has another question, so I was going to just unmute him again so he can put it directly to you.
Okay, go for it, Liam.
I've unmuted.
Go ahead, Liam.
Stephen, thank you very much. I want to play off Hank's question because I also bring a lot of experience that I really want to help people grow with. What do you, besides the 2 books you've listed, what do you consider some of the best resources and conversation places for us to go to be in the fountain of DevOps?
There is a book coming out by Gene Kim and Patrick Dubois and John Willis, which I think is called DevOps the Novel, and it's very, 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 very near to coming out. And what this attempts to do is to consolidate the large body of thoughts and ideas and expertise which is consolidated over the last few years. So when that comes out, you should get it. Beyond that, there is a DevOps mailing list. It can get a bit shouty, so I am a little bit hesitant to recommend that, but it's a good source. If you're familiar with IRC, Internet Relay Chat, there are two very good IRC channels that you could check out. One of them is called DevOps, and another one is called Infra-Talk. Both of those IRC channels have people who are doing this every day, are passionate about it, and have a lot to share. Similarly, if you are involved or want to get involved in automating your infrastructure, I can speak from my perspective as a person within the Chef community. There's also a Chef IRC channel and a Chef mailing list, and that community is very open and very friendly. And full of people who are doing this on a day-by-day basis and are very open to people coming in and asking dumb questions and then being kind to them. Not that you would ask dumb questions. What I mean is anyone who's been on IRC for a while, sometimes it can be a hostile place. The Chef community, so the funny thing is, with a name like Chef, every so often people come into the IRC channel saying, I need to cook dinner for my girlfriend. Can you help me? And in a traditional IRC channel, you might get told to go away or laughed at or mocked. But frequently in the Chef IRC channel, you'll see people stopping their work and they'll say, oh, hey, yeah, so no problem. So do you have ingredients? Are you good at cooking? Do you know what your girlfriend likes? And the whole channel stops and helps this person to cook dinner to win the girl. And that's just an example of friendliness, and it's a tangent, because I remember when I first started using IRC many years ago, it wasn't the friendliest of places. And then just beyond that, if you can get to a DevOps meetup, because there are DevOps meetups sometimes, or groups associated, that'd be a great thing to do. If you are based in Europe, in Rome in October, the time has passed for getting to the DevOps Days in Mountain View, but there will be another one soon, I can assure you. And then, of course, the other great source is Twitter. If you, in fact, I think there's probably a couple of good blog articles about good DevOps people to follow on Twitter. But if you follow me on Twitter, I'm Lord Cope. If you follow me on Twitter, and then look at some of the people I follow, you'll get there. And also, if you look for the hashtag DevOps on Twitter, you'll see lots of interesting ideas. Yeah, that should be that should help you get there. And Henk says that a DevOps Amsterdam meetup group was set up last week. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. So unless there are any more questions, which I'm happy to field, I think it's time to hand back to Alec and finish off the meeting.
Okay. Well, thanks. So run a bit over time, but it's a good sign, I think. We had some interesting questions, and we will be having the DevOps Summit next week, and we'll also be running it again in Amsterdam in November. So hopefully we can keep everyone interested in that, and hopefully speak to you soon.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.